Hi there and welcome to Book Monday, and today I'm going to be talking about and reviewing the Kismet Knight Vampire Shrink trilogy. So unfortunately I don't have the very first book in the trilogy to show you because the book was actually lent to me by my friend, and after I read it I gave it back to her. But I do have the other two books in the series in physical copy here, and the synopsis for the first book is actually in the back of the last book. So I will just read you the synopsis, and I'll put a picture on the screen of what the book looks like. So, the synopsis of the first book, The Vampire Shrink. As a rational scientist who knows full well vampires are all hokum, Kismet Knight is the perfect choice to counsel troubled wannabe vamps. That is, until she meets Devereaux, a sexy, mysterious man who claims to be a real and immensely powerful 800-year-old vampire, and she is pulled into a whirlwind of inexplicable events that start her questioning everything she once believed about the paranormal. Kismet Knight is about to achieve her dream job, but becoming the Vampire Shrink is going to change her life forever. So, excuse me. So the first book, I have to admit, I was a little bit reluctant to pick it up because I did the thing that you really should not do with books, and that is I was judging the book by its cover. The copy that I had from my friend was a really, really cheesy cover. It looked some kind of like gothy romance, and I was kind of a bit, put off reading it. But I picked it up and I really enjoyed it, I have to say. And as you know, if you've been watching this channel for a while, I've been going through a lot of vampire books because my friend gave me a lot of vampire books. And they're all different, to be honest with you. And the problem is, I think, I hate to compare stuff to other books, but like the Twilight series, I think is so ingrained in your head that sometimes you kind of keep thinking about that when you're reading. And so like this book was just totally different. The vampires in this book could travel through thought with their minds. They could pop in and out of rooms as they pleased. They slept in coffins during the day like you would expect a vampire to do. Some of the vampires had magical abilities. They had witchcraft, and the main character Devereaux in the book, he was from a druid past, so he brings that kind of influence through a lot. And yeah, it was just kind of totally different. Each vampire book that I read is totally different. I guess vampires are all just myth and legend, so I guess we have to kind of improvise. We've got, a bit of a license there to improvise. So, I mean, that was quite interesting, I have to admit. And I have to say, the first book I really thoroughly enjoyed, and my friend only read the first book, and so I ordered the second book before I was even halfway through the first book, and the third book didn't come out until January of this year, and I pre-ordered that as well at the same time. And yeah, so I was struggling to remember the first book a bit because I read that sort of late November, early December, and but I just remember just thoroughly enjoying it. And it was really interesting to see that that it kind of starts out that she has a client who wants to be a vampire, and her parents and Devereaux, who's the lead vampire, who's the coven leader, insists she goes and sees a psychologist because, to talk it all through rationally. And because of that, Kismet then becomes aware of the vampire world, and then because she becomes aware of the vampire world, she becomes a little bit of a threat. But also the coven leader, she sparks up a romantic liaison with, and she just kind of basically tries to build up her reputation. She decides that she wants to write a book about vampire wannabes, but in doing so she kind of meets quite a few enemies along the way. And then she also ends up counselling you know, vampires as well as wannabe vampires, because they've also got troubled pasts, and you know, she has clients that have a phobia of blood and phobia of the night and all that kind of thing. So that's really, really, really interesting. And that's kind of all I can remember about book 1, to be honest with you. Book 2's huge, great big book. If you look at the size of book 3 compared to book 2, and it has exactly the same font size and print and everything. I thoroughly enjoyed this book, the second book as well. We kind of see Kismet settling into her role with the vampires a lot more, and there is, you know, she kind of deals with her life with vampires, and she kind of tries to like fit into a world that's totally different, and whilst also remaining true to herself. And yeah, there's quite a few events in this book, some of which I find it really odd, because obviously it's fantasy, it's not real, but sometimes I like it to be slightly believable or slightly plausible, and there are a few events that I was kind of a bit like, okay, a bit odd. But it was very interesting. This is kind of a bit of to me, this is a bit of a cheesy cover. This is very similar to the first book, and that kind of cover puts me off, like if I was to see it in a shop. So I'm glad I didn't get put off by that in the end. Yeah, and she there's basically a demented, crazy vampire who is out to get her because she thinks that he thinks that she's going to spread the secret of vampires, and you know, there's a kind of like that. And so this kind of book to me kind of is about her, most of it was about her settling down into the vampire world, and also on the run from the crazed vampire who's out to get her. And also she has a love triangle. She's still with Devro, the coven leader, and there's also a bit of a love triangle in there. So yeah, I really enjoyed that one, and I was anxiously awaiting the third in the series. And it came out at the beginning of January, and I didn't rush to read it because I was already going through the Fairwick Chronicles. So I waited for a while, and I picked this up after I'd read it. And the reason I didn't do a book review last week is because I was still reading this book. And I have to say, to begin with, I really struggled to get into this book. And I had a bit of a reading slump. And I almost felt like, because in here we've got another crazed, demented vampire who's after Kismet. And in this book I started to feel a bit like, okay, we've seen that now. You know, it was very interesting. I mean, I kind of, for the first half of the book, I kind of felt like I had to force myself to read it. The second half of the book, or the third of the book, was really good and gripping, and I really enjoyed it. And so I had a real love-hate relationship with this book. Overall, I'm kind of glad I read it. To me, she could have left it at this book, I think. You know, it didn't need this book, the third one. There wasn't anything in the third book that she tied up really from the first book. There was a lot of sex in this book, so if you don't like raunchy, sexy books, then this one's definitely not for you. And I kind of felt like, don't get me wrong, you know, sex in books is fine when it's good for the story. But there was a lot of sex in this, and it's like, yeah, we get it, he's a lusty, sexy vampire. So I was a little bit bored of the sex after a while. How many times can I say sex? I was a little bit bored of that, and some of it was a bit cheesy in this book, so that could have been a bit of a miss for me. I mean, it resolved the issues with kind of the crazed vampires, but I don't know if she's going to write another book or not. She kind of sort of summarised it, but I was kind of left thinking, I don't know if that's a good thing, like with books, to leave you on a ooh, but I was kind of left thinking, I was kind of left thinking, oh, I wonder what happens between them. Do they end up, you know, staying together forever, or, you know, does she eventually turn into a vampire, or, you know, those kind of things. So, yeah, I'm not really sure what to say about this one because, yeah, for me it wasn't the best book in the trilogy. Overall, I really enjoyed the trilogy. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad I read it. I really enjoyed it. Just this book for me was a bit like, it was almost like a book for book's sake, if you know what I mean. And I guess some of the beginning of it with it wasn't kind of getting to the point. It was just like, yeah, there's another vampire after Kismet. Ooh, you know. So yeah, that's just kind of my take on it anyway. Yeah. If you've read it, let me know what you think. I genuinely would love to talk to people about these books if you've read them, because I'm not in a book club and I really want to be in a book club, and I'm looking on Goodreads at some online book clubs. But yeah, if you've read these books, I'd love to know what you think, because I just love to chat and review and critique and find other things in the book that perhaps I wasn't aware of, or, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.